Good evening, Belize, and welcome to XTV's news broadcast for Thursday, April 10, 2025. Making the headlines tonight, 3 teens detained for stealing 15 horses and chopping one. Transportation Minister promises stricter oversight and regulation. And Belize's should get DNA legislation by the end of 2025. We take our first break and return with the news in detail.
Make just overall, their service is excellent.
Welcome back. With your news, I am Drea Espinosa. 15 horses were reported stolen yesterday from a farm north of Ladyville Police District near mile 13 on the Philip Golson Highway. The horses are valued at $15,000 each. Tour operator Joshua Trapp said that when he returned to his farm, he discovered the horses were missing. A quick search led to the recovery of 7 of the horses found tied to nearby trees. Things turned horrific when earlier today a video of a horse being abused went viral. In the video, young men are shown handling a horse that was not heeding their commands. One of the young men can then be seen brutally inflicting chop wounds to its head and neck. While it was thought to have been one of Trapp's horses, the police indicate that the owner of the wounded horse is 18-year-old Goldborn Maskell, a student from Holy Emmanuel Street. He told police he left the horse grazing in an abandoned lot off Faubers Road on Friday, April 4, and when he went back to check for the horse in the evening, it was not there. The Commissioner of Police, Chester Williams, subsequently condemned the cruelty and said, quote, "As a society, we must stand together against all forms of abuses, including those where animals are concerned. The police department is taking this matter very seriously and assure the general public that we will do all within our power to hold those responsible to justice," end quote. 3 male teenagers aged 19, 17, and 16 have since been detained, and another was being sought. In the afternoon, he provided an update on the case.
Having received that bit of footage, I had directed that the police conduct an investigation, and that investigation must include that we locate all those persons who were seen in that bit of footage, so that they can be brought in as a part of the police investigation. That was done this morning. GI3 personnel were activated immediately, and they were quick to find those persons concerned. Police also went and they located the owner of the horse, and that person has likewise made a report to the police, and based on that, the police is prepared to proceed with charges against those persons. I can say to you that we are looking at the possibility of charges for cruelty to animal, and will seek further advice on the DPP to see if there's any additional charge that we can prefer against those individuals. Again, we need to send a strong signal. We're seeing that this type of offense has become more prevalent, where animals are being treated inhumanely and in such a cruel way. My thing is that if these young men could have done this to the horse, I could just imagine what they did to a human being. The horse obviously was helpless, was tied and helpless, and despite that, you saw where they constantly charged at the horse with that machete, inflicting chop wounds to the horse. I guess just for the love of it, it is something that cannot be countenanced, and as a society, I was happy that the people were able to share it with me. I was not too happy to see it being shared on social media the way it did, because then it's like we're promoting this type of activity. But those who shared it on social media, I think they did so with good intention, but yes, it still sends a wrong signal. And we just need to make sure that we, as a society, protect against all forms of abuse, and especially abuse that has to do with children and animals. We have to do as best as we can where those are concerned.
The commissioner admitted that the penalty is a misdemeanor offense and only carries a fine. He said there is the need to amend the law to increase the penalties.
While the penalty for the offense itself, which is cruelty to animal, may carry a small fine, we're also looking at abatement to commit cruelty to animal, and the abatement is going to take it to a different level. It's going to take the penalty more severe, and so we're hoping that we'll be able to go that road, and that way we send a stronger signal to those young men as well as to others who may have in mind to commit such acts.
The injured horse was recovered from the dike area of Fabers Road Extension in Belize City and was attended to by Dr. Celestino Petch, the Deputy Technical Director of Animal Health at Baja. Dr. Petch said that he had not seen wounds as bad as these before. He condemned the acts of the teenagers and said he hopes the horse can make a full recovery. Baja is also testing if any of the maggots that were present on the injuries of the horse were of the New World screwworm.
We received the notification this morning, so we immediately went to see the horse. And at the moment that I arrived, it was a horrific scene looking at those injuries. I was able to extract some of the worms that were there. As you may know, screwworm is a threat to the country currently that Baja is controlling. Therefore, the samples were collected and they're going to be sent into the lab to confirm if there is any screwworm or if the worms that were present were only the maggots. As you may know as well, Baja looks after animal welfare. So this is a case where this involves us, and I believe that there are not strong laws against animal cruelty here in Belize. Therefore, I do not condone this activity that these teenagers did. And as a veterinarian here in Belize for the past 12 years, I have not seen wounds like this before. This is something that requires a lot of care, and it will get some medications already for the pain and antibiotics. But hopefully the horse is able to make a full recovery.
The incident has sparked public outrage as the young men in question have been accused for weeks of abusing horses they had in their care in Belize City, with residents claiming they are not given food nor water and are left without shelter in the sun and are ridden without shoes. One horse was left for dead in a drain last week. Despite efforts from the community, it later passed away. Transport comprises the largest aspect of Minister Luis Zabinet's portfolio. In an interview today about his new role, he shared that his main focus will be on enforcement and regulation, which he says his CEO will be able to assist greatly with. At the same time, he reminded us that in a previous life, he was greatly involved in the transport industry.
National transportation in particular, bus transportation, we know that has been something that has affected us for decades, where we've had poor quality service across the country, a number of issues, especially that related to the safety of commuters on buses because of things like racing or poor quality equipment. Then the service that you get at the terminals, the whole experience is wanting of significant attention for the quality to be improved. So that is another area that we will be working on, and we're in conversation on ways that we can improve the system. I would hope that within the next month or so, we would come to an understanding at cabinet on how we will address this problem that has been going on. But at the end of the day, what we want is a modern national bus system that will serve our commuters, where we get rid of the racing on the roads, where we are able to improve the punctuality of service, where the quality of service at the terminals are improved, where we can find ways to reduce overall costs of operations of the buses. And of course, doing all of that in concert with the bus operators, who I have the privilege of knowing many of them from my past life working in the bus business myself.
Zabanes says they will also focus on improving the legislative framework. Alluding to a stricter management in the ministry, he shared that he has already met with some senior administrators to emphasize the need for greater efficiency and transparency in the work of the ministry.
So I've already met with our senior management here with transport. We've met with the leaders from across the country, and I've made it very clear to them that we have a responsibility to all Belizeans to do our jobs properly, to do our jobs ethically, to ensure that that we recognize that what we have in our hands, if we're whatever resources we now have available, those are being paid for by taxpayers. The vehicles that we drive, that's not our vehicles, those are the vehicles of the Belizean people, and we must take care of all of our assets, and we must endeavor to do things the right way. I mentioned that things like buying driver's license and all of this nonsense has got to end. I have worked with in the past couple of weeks. We have some very good people in the ministry, but we will ensure that we for example, our audit department is fully engaged to ensure that what occurs at all of our stations across the country in terms of revenue collections are properly evaluated, and that these funds come into the coffers. So things like that we've made clear already to all persons working within the ministry, and I have every expectation that they will fulfill their duties in an ethical way and that they'll be going out there to serve the public. So we're starting out from there and then going into the details of those laws that need to be revised, those that need to be enforced, making sure that we do what it is that we should be doing. That is my responsibility, to ensure that the people in the ministry are doing their part. And I made it very clear to them as well that I have the highest expectations that they will do their part, but if there's anybody who is proving otherwise, it will be time for them to leave.
Before the close of the year, it is expected that Belize will have a DNA Act that will formalize the use of DNA results as legal evidence. Stakeholders from different groups today participated in a consultation on the draft bill at the Belize Biltmore Plaza Hotel in Belize City. The work, supported with funding from the UNDP's PACE Justice Project, started in December and a consultation began in January. Jian Cho, the Executive Director of the National Forensic Science Service, NFSS, explained some of the aspects that the bill provides for.
It is to have a specific piece of legislation called a DNA Act, when it does get passed, that governs how we use DNA in the investigation and prosecution of criminal offenses. Currently, we use DNA, as you would know. We get convictions every year using DNA evidence. But it's accepted through more common law procedures, through the Evidence Act. There's no specific DNA bill or DNA Act yet in Belize's legislation. One of the main things that it seeks to do is to establish a national DNA database. Other countries have such a database. We don't have a DNA database yet for Belize. So to establish a DNA database for the investigation and prosecution of criminal offenses, we're dealing with people's human genetic data. There are several international norms and practices when you collect people's genetic data, when you store it, when you search it. We need to make sure that we have regulations or laws in place that governs how that's used. So how a national DNA database is established, how DNA samples are collected from individuals who are suspected to have committed offenses in a manner that respects their bodily integrity, their privacy, their dignity. How searches of that database is conducted, who has access to the database, what we do with any matches that come from the database, who are authorized to enter profiles into the database, how profiles are generated. So all of these requirements to ensure the safeguard of human genetic data, the standards of searching and how we determine a match are in line with the international requirements and what we know other countries have in their legislation. As well as oversight for such a database.
The legislation also establishes what must happen if someone does not wish to provide DNA samples for a case.
Consent is not given by the individual, what would be the processes that the authorities follow, which would be to obtain a court order. Once certain thresholds are met, the investigator, a senior rank inspector and above, would have to issue or make the request to a magistrate to issue a court order to collect a DNA sample if the person does not give consent. So we're looking at consent first. And then we also have to look at minors, when minors are victims, or when minors are suspects, or when parents of minors might be involved. So we have to look at how court order is given in those individuals and in those instances. And the bill speaks all of those different circumstances when a court order would be needed, and for what would be considered reasonable cause to obtain a court order, what would be instances where reasonable force can be used to obtain the DNA sample. And in most instances, it would be a cheek swab that we're obtaining.
With this law coming into force soon, do you expect that criminals would try to safeguard in how they commit crimes so that there's no DNA evidence left behind?
All right, so criminals are always getting smarter and smarter, and that's why we need to continue to advance forensic science and the use of physical evidence in the investigation and prosecution of offenses. And we're doing that right now. We invest in rapid DNA, so we're already starting with the equipment and the validation to be able to collect profiles or DNA samples from individuals. So we're doing that right now. Parallel to that, we're making sure legislation is passed so that we can increase that effort to be able to be one step ahead of any person who is thinking to commit a crime or who have committed crimes, or serial offenders who may still be out there or be convicted in prison, who may have been linked to other crimes or incidents in the past, but we're not able to link them yet. And this is how databases are used in other countries, where you can actually find out that somebody who's convicted of one offense was actually linked to several other offenses in the past.
At this time, consent is one of the limiting factors to increase convictions, as people cannot currently be forced to give DNA samples. Cho also explained when a DNA sample can be obtained from an accused under the bill.
The legislation speaks to the instances where an inspector of police or above a rank can apply to a magistrate to obtain a court order to obtain a DNA sample, a bodily sample from an individual. And the magistrate is the one who has to weigh the facts of the case and to see if there is reasonable cause that this person is suspected of committing an offense. And that will depend on what goes into the application. And then the magistrate will be the one to issue the court order and instruct the individual to present themselves to the nearest police station to provide a DNA sample. And if they refuse, then the police has the authority in the law, not right now, in this new one, right? I just want to make that clear. We're still talking hypothetical right now. Would then have the authority to use reasonable force to restrain the individual. But again, it will only be for certain types of offenses, and once the magistrate deems it necessary to issue that court order. Right. If there is sufficient cause to suspect that this person is involved in committing an offense. At the stage of the investigation, if the police ask somebody to provide a DNA sample to exclude themselves, if they say I was not there, they can consent to give a DNA sample. It will go into a database, we'll search. If there's no hit, it will be removed from the database, because that's an important part of what the bill speaks of as well. The retention, the management, and the removal of profiles from a database. And again, it goes back to respecting your right to privacy. Just because you give your DNA profile doesn't mean it will stay in perpetuity in the database. There are time periods for removal of the profiles. No,
What's the time period?
3 months if you're not found, if you're not charged, or if the case is dismissed. And again, these are proposed time periods. 12 months if there's no charge. If you're still under investigation and after 12 months there's no charge brought, it will be removed from the database. If you're convicted, 30 years, the profile will remain in the database. These are standard. These are similar to what other countries have.
With the new, victims could get swifter justice. The new Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs, Dr. Louis Zabane, met on Wednesday with the 2 area representatives for the Toledo District and representatives of the Toledo Alcaldes Association and the Julian Shaw Society. He called it a good meeting. Asked about challenges ahead in reconciling the government's position with the rights of the Maya people, and the interests of third parties. Zabanes said he will apply the approach he employed with the teachers in school managements.
I think I learned quite a bit about the true power of genuine collaboration when I worked along with the BNTU and along with members of the various churches for managements of schools. And we went countrywide at least 3 times across the country as a team. And we were able to achieve a lot because the teachers were the ones around the table working on these transformative measures that we were able to enact. And that's the same approach that I'm taking with the people, the communities in Toledo. We're not enemies. We're all Belizeans. We must come together and find common ground. They recognize that they're within a country called Belize, and we recognize that they're indigenous to this part of the world. We recognize that there's also a 2015 ruling by the CCJ, and it is for us now to work as a team to find the path forward, and that is how we approached it yesterday. And I believe all of us there felt that it was a very good meeting, and that certain things that we were able to share in that atmosphere, I think set a stage for which we know that whatever compromises need to be made, that at least we're making it among friends, we're making it among people who genuinely want the best interests of the Maya people in Toledo, and of course, considering the interests of Belizeans across the country.
Dr. Zabanes says he has agreed to meet with them every 2 months. The purpose of Wednesday's meeting, according to the minister, was to open the channels of communication so they did not get into the finer details. However, he says they walked away with the understanding that they need to get things done together. After the break, RTA claims a man's life in the South. Stay with us.
Hi there. Are you on your the conversation.
Belize Electricity Limited, providing you safe and reliable power when you need it.
There was a fatal traffic accident in Cattle Landing Village just outside Punta Gorda. The accident involved a motorcyclist and a pickup truck which collided in the area known as Borland's Curve. The motorcyclist died at the scene. His identity has not yet been revealed. Dr. Louis Zabanem, Minister of Constitution and Religious Affairs, Indigenous Affairs and Transportation, confirmed to Creme News XTV that he expects his CEO, Chester Williams, to have fully transitioned over at the beginning of May. According to the minister, the fact that he has not had a CEO appointed as yet has not greatly hindered their work.
I've been in touch with CEO Williams, to be CEO, and we have met a few times, and so that has not been much of an issue. We know that he has his office, his previous office, that he has a transition period there, but in the meantime, we've been able to communicate and met a few times.
Are you clear on when exactly he will be fully over with you?
Yeah, my understanding is that as of the 1st of May, that he will be here officially. But in the meantime, he has been over a number of times, so that by the time he gets here officially, he would have been aware of the main points that we have to address, the areas of priority. And so May 1st, we look forward to having him here.
And in the meantime, you haven't had anyone acting in the post. I know sometimes the CABSEC who oversees the CEOs would function in that role.
Yes, where we've needed signatures, etc., the CABSEC has graciously assisted us, and so we've been moving forward. And in in my case, I've had the privilege again of being briefed by the former CEO who was responsible for Indigenous Affairs, Ms. Katsim, and yeah, that has been very helpful. I've met with the team in Punta Gorda, and then with respect to constitutional and religious affairs, we've met with those persons who are working in that area and who continue to work, for example, with the People's Constitution Commission. I've met with the chairman, and Attorney General Sylvester has been extremely helpful. He's been, of course, involved in a number of these issues as well.
Dr. Leroy Almendares has been announced as the Chief Executive Officer in the Ministry of Public Utilities, Energy and Logistics. He was sworn in by Governor General Dame Froila Salama on Wednesday. Dr. Almendares was previously the Executive Director of Beltrade before a short stint of 5 months as CEO at the Social Security Board. He departed the SSB in January this year, reportedly because he and the board were not seeing eye to eye on internal administrative matters. The minister in charge of public utilities is Attorney Michelle Shabat. 2 U.S. fugitives who were hiding out in Belize have been returned to face justice. The duo was wanted for separate offenses of weapons trafficking and rape. According to the U.S. Embassy in Belize, their returns were coordinated with assistance from the U.S. Marshal Services. That's the FBI, the Belize Police Department, Interpol, Belize Immigration, Tennessee Law Enforcement, and U.S. Embassy staff in Belize. In health news, with 6 states in the United States having outbreaks of measles, Belize health officials have organized a meeting for tomorrow to discuss enhanced vaccination campaigns. Those states include Texas, Indiana, Ohio, Kansas, and Oklahoma, while individual cases have been reported in other states. It has been pointed out that Belize receives direct flights from Texas, which has the majority of cases numbering over 500. Texas First notified the World Health Organization about their ongoing outbreak on March 11 this year. Unvaccinated children under the age of 5 are more at risk of developing complications from measles, which is passed from person to person. Infected persons present symptoms that include fever, dry cough, runny nose, conjunctivitis, and rash. Good hygiene practices are advised to prevent infection. Measles was declared eliminated in the U.S. in the year 2000, but since that time, there have been imported cases, and the U.S. is now working with countries in the region to prevent its spread. After the break, Belize could be an option for Canadian tourists who are boycotting U.S. travel. Stay tuned.
20 years ago, online and receive real-time status updates.
Many Canadians are currently unhappy with U.S. President Donald Trump over his constant threat to increase import tariffs on Canadian goods and him calling the country the 51st state of the U.S. Due to this, many Canadians are choosing to boycott purchasing U.S. products and traveling to the country. The latter is significant as most visitors to the U.S. are from Canada. According to Belize adventure travel blog, quote, Canadians made over 20 million trips to the U.S. in 2024, spending more than $20 billion US dollars, more than any other country. But that number is already failing. In March 2025 alone, return trips to the U.S. dropped by 13.5% for air travel and 32% for land travel compared to the same time last year, end quote. Today we spoke with tourism industry stakeholders who spoke on potentially tapping into the Canadian market. Lorenzo Gonzalez, who is the founder of Belize Tourism Futures and Belize Adventure Travel blog, said he has already had good feedback from Canadians he helped to travel to Belize.
If, for example, 10% or 20% less Canadians visit the US, that is about 2 billion or 4 billion tourists, and the result of that is like $4 billion lost in revenue. So initially last year, many places were reporting that they noticed that there was a decline in Canadian making reservations for the US, and now we're seeing that materialize. So last month alone, what happened is that there was 32% less land travelers to the US over the land border from Canada, and there was 13.2% less flights, so people flying from Canada to the US. And what I've witnessed personally is that since I have a travel blog that writes about Belize, a lot of Canadian travelers are reaching out to me, asking me for help to plan their travel to Belize. And when I ask them, why are you doing this? The main thing that they mention is that they're really upset with how the US President Donald Trump is treating Canada and what they're saying about Canada, and they want to showcase that they want to put their foot down and basically vote with their pocket. And I've been helping several people plan their trip to Belize, and whenever they go and they come back and they're just like, wow, I don't know why, but I didn't know enough about Belize. I hope that the tourism industry could better attract Canadians, because we are interested in visiting and we would love to be able to travel there more often.
Christy Valdez is the marketing coordinator at the lodge at Chaw Creek, and she said that while they have not seen much of an increase in reservations from Canadians, there is increased interest.
We haven't seen that uptick. It's more of a noise, like Lorenzo said. There is a surge. There's a surge in searches of what we're seeing, and we're also looking at alternative markets because we are seeing that because of all the noise going on in the American market, there is a little bit of a slower trend in bookings. We're seeing it, and we're trying to be cautious. You don't want to be alerting people when you don't know what's going to happen. So that's something that we take care of it. We monitor it. We're writing blogs, we're looking at other interests, publishing, and even so geo-targeted marketing. So for Canada, because we are being cautious, it's still too early to tell, oh, they're booking now. It's impossible to see that huge surge, It's incorrect if I say, yeah, there's a surge. There's not a big surge when it comes to booking, but people are showing interest, and that's very good for the tourism industry.
Efren Perez, the president of the Belize Tourism Industry Association, BTIA, said that with the economic uncertainty surrounding the U.S. currently, he expects to see an increase of visitors from Canada and other countries. He said he also expects regional travel to increase.
And just last year, I think we had about 11% of our overnight tours were Canadians. Given the volatility right now in the US, I think that there is going to be definitely an increase over time in alternative markets, including the Canadian market. We can start to look at, for example, marketing efforts that are being done not only through private sector but also through the tourism board and the Ministry of Tourism in terms of looking at regional travel. Looking at those connections with B2B opportunities from those within our region. And those flights that come into, for example, Guatemala, El Salvador, Panama, that are long haul flights that we can actually tap into if we would be able to work very closely with those operators that have established those markets in those key countries. Belize does serve as a great alternative. I mean, we are very similar to them in terms of having a British system. We are an English-speaking country, and we give them quite a number of alternatives when it comes to that tropical experience and a getaway from the cold weather. So I think that we can definitely see an increase. It might not be a blowout, but I think that definitely there will be an increase in terms of how we view it. And given that we also have direct flights from Canada and chartered flights from Canada, I think that also helps in terms of the windows of opportunities that can be received from that particular market.
In 2023, the Belize Airport Concession Company, the private entity responsible for operating and managing the Philip Golson International Airport, PGIA, announced a major upgrade and expansion plans for the airport. This includes jet bridges and expanded terminal, the ability to accommodate more aircraft, including larger long-haul aircraft, among other improvements. However, in the meantime, visitors continue to complain about the long waits, bad customer service, and a general lack of many amenities offered at other international airports. Efren Perez, the president of the BTIA, said that while they are not directly involved with the project, they are kept abreast of the works being done at the PGIA. He said there have been delays with the works being done and that they are in dialogue with ministry representatives and they are aware of the issues being experienced at the PGIA. However, he said it won't be an overnight fix.
The conversation has to continue. I don't believe that it is something that will be able to change overnight. There are steps, like I said, that are being carried out right now in terms of the expansion of the airport. There has been delays, and I think that has, like you rightly said, caused some of those challenges that we've heard lately over the news. Nonetheless, I think that from our point of view, from BTIA's point of view, we will continue knocking on those doors and talking to those relevant authorities for us to be able to try to see how best we'll be able to create some sort of positive impact, especially at the airport where it is the front line, where as tourists come in, that's what they see, or that is the last thing they see when they leave, right? And so that sort of positive customer services is certainly something that we're going to continue to dialogue and work with.
Lorenzo Gonzalez, who is a tourism stakeholder himself, shared a negative experience he had recently where many tourists were unhappy. He says he believes it's time that the government takes a more proactive approach in dealing with the experience at the PGIA.
I had a very negative experience when I flew into Belize in December, and I was surprised because I'm like, okay, I know they're making all these upgrades, and of course it's going to take a while, but I think people are getting frustrated, and it's showing, and it should be more of a priority towards the government should make more of a priority since they're hearing all the concerns. So my experience was that I remember tourists shouting at each other about the line. And the line was wrapped around way to the outside, and tourists are basically shouting at each other about being upset and being frustrated that they're waiting in the line so long. And I'm like, I have been involved in the tourism industry for over 15 years, when people go on vacation, they're happy, they're excited, they aren't upset. But when I was seeing them in that line being upset, I was sad for them. I was, because I'm like, oh my goodness, this should be the happiest time for them, but yet they're so upset because of the way how they're being treated here at the airport. So I definitely brought it up with Efren, and Efren did mention something very important, where it's like we're actually seeing issues around airport not being able to handle the capacity of travelers around the world. So this is due to the rise in surge in travel after the pandemic. So that's one thing to consider. But that said, I do think that if we continue pushing on this issue, that we need the airport to get better, because it is the first impression that travelers get. If we continue pushing that towards the government and any officials that are in charge, they will eventually do something about it. So I want to keep pressing on it, just so that we can perhaps get more attention on it, and the government finally does something about it.
In 2019, Belize achieved record numbers for tourist arrivals in the country, for air travel, for overnight tour visitors, and for cruise ship visitors. Then, in 2020, the global pandemic happened and put a halt to that continued growth in tourism. Fast forward to 2024, Belize finally topped the 2024 figures for overnight travelers and for air travel and for cruise ship arrivals to reach near 2019 peak levels. Now, in 2025, the global tariff wars may once again affect global travel. Will history repeat itself? Efren Perez, the president of the BTIA, says that generally travelers already try to avoid flying through the U.S. and that Belize has alternative air connections. Christy Valdez, the marketing coordinator at the lodge at Chaw Creek, says it is a time to be cautious, but that there should be no panic.
I think that overall, an increase in tariffs would mean that, people would have less spending income in any given situation. And I think people will be looking for alternatives. I think that over the years, we've seen that a lot of people choose not to travel over the US because of the restrictions that they've had, visa requirements and all of that. And I think they look for alternatives as much as possible.
Tourism is one of our main industries, and it's unfortunate that we are so prone to these effects, whether it be the tariff, the government, and seeking other alternatives to bring people here to Belize. We have to just be presenting a united front, a voice where we can say, hey, come to Belize. You don't need a visa once in 30 days. There's direct flights and there are other alternatives. Apart from luxury hotels, you have your backpackers, you have your peacocker, you have your Placencia. So that's the voice I would like from Chaw Creek to be heard. It's just, an invitation to come to Belize. It's not a panicked voice, because that's something that we come across whenever we talk, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen and this and that, people are gonna come, it's gonna be COVID all over. But we just want to be united and present an invitation to those coming to Belize, We're here, we have everything open, and there is sea, there's jungle, there's sunshine, there's birds, everything you need in Belize.
Lorenzo Gonzalez, the founder of Belize Tourism Futures and Belize Adventure Travel blog, said that tourism stakeholders should already be aware of issues potentially affecting the industry and should also be aware of the visitors they attract and adapt to their unique needs and expectations.
Like, the Belize tourism industry should always stay up to date with what's happening in the world. For example, as a marketer, you should be monitoring the international news on a daily basis and see where there's opportunities for you to leverage the situation. And the perfect example is what's happening with the tariff war and Canadians choosing not to visit the US. Like, if you're in marketing or just overall a manager at a resort, you should be planning for this and being like talking to everyone and being like, hey, like, what are opportunities? What are things that we should be doing to leverage this? How can we target these travelers? How can we make these travelers more comfortable when they visit also? Because the way how you treat an American and a Canadian should be different because they have different values, and or sometimes they might come and they don't want you. Like, imagine you're in Belize as a Canadian traveler and you decided to visit Belize because you don't want to hear anything about Donald Trump, but yet you go to a resort and while you're enjoying lunch or dinner, the waiter is praising Donald Trump and saying how much they love him, right? So these are just very simple things about how you have to educate your staff, but also target the right customers at the right time.
A security guard, 68-year-old Isidro Khan, passed away sometime before 6 on Monday evening near Independence Park in Belmopan. A teacher from the nearby Angela Casey preschool, Elsa Magana, said she saw him lying face down when she was locking up. She went to help but was unable to do much and tried to make him comfortable as he took his last breaths. She recounted the tragic ordeal.
I noticed the clock, it was 5:30, and I started to lock up the windows at the back. Upon coming to the front, I heard a strange, loud noise. Someone So I peeped through the door. I stepped outside, and that's when I noticed feet. And I looked out more, and I saw the security guard facing down. So I immediately came out, and I asked him, "Are you okay, sir?" And all I saw was he clenched his fist and was, letting out heavy breaths. So I decided to immediately call for help. I told the personnel that he needs medical attention as well. So I did my best to turn him over, to elevate his body, because being that he was in that position, I believe he needed air. So I turned him over. I tried to elevate his body and his head as much as I could. I struggled because he was heavy and it was by myself. I looked around everywhere and no one was around to help me. So that's why I found convenient to do at the moment, elevate his body and his head. So once I saw him in that position, I came and I grabbed a pillow for him to be comfortable. I kept speaking to him. I spoke to him, but he didn't respond to me in words, but just kept, blowing hard. He didn't show any signs like he was running out of breath at that moment, but I just kept talking to him, telling him that help is coming soon, and just be there, just until help arrives. And there I was, looking at him slipping away little by little till he gave his last breath. It was really a shocking moment.
A relative of Khan later told the media that the family suspects he passed away from a heart attack. And with that, we have come to the end of our newscast. The repeat can be viewed on the station later tonight at 9 and again tomorrow at midday. Join us again tomorrow for another news broadcast. I am Drea Espinosa. Have a safe and enjoyable evening.